Drew Beach, executive coach, helping professionals communicate their value to find great opportunities faster. Joining you today from Restream.io. The Restream platform has been gracious in providing me a beta access to their Live Studio Pro feature. It allows me to have on the fly live opportunities to talk to great people like you. So if you're interested in live coaching, go ahead and put it in the chat if you're open to live coaching, and I can bring you onto this stream using your webcam and everything. And good, I'm loud and clear. That's great. It's good to know that things are actually working today. So I should probably put in some headphones if we're going to have some folks come in here. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the chat that you're interested in maybe coming on and taking advantage of some live coaching. Let's see what this says. This is the first time I'm using this, so am I keeping it enabled? Audio processing. Okay. Okay, enable audio processing. Does it sound any different now? I enabled something on here. Good, so you see me, you can hear me. Yes, thank you, good to have you. If you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. I'm just really doing a live test here today. So nothing really, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I like nice shirts too. Karar, I appreciate that. So go ahead and let me know in the chat what questions you have. Use the hashtag career happy hour. Happy hour. There we go. Let me know what questions you have. I do have a couple of topics that I'd like to go over, but we'll go over those here in just a second. If you could please, down at the bottom of your screen, if you're on LinkedIn, go ahead and share. It sounds better. That's good. Okay. So I adjusted the echo cancellation. I guess there was a setting there, Terry, when we tested it out that I had unchecked. So that's on me. So good to see all of you. Gosh, this is great. This is just so much easier than what I was setting up before. I have to admit, but I am a little washed out here. So maybe I'll adjust the brightness, and so I don't make you guys have to put your sunglasses on. So hopefully that's a little bit better. Good, I'm glad. I can always move the microphone closer if we need to. So if you want, go ahead and put it in the chat that you're open to coming on live. And I'm happy to test this out with anybody. Ted, good, we tried to make that happen today. So what's on my mind today? Well, I wanted to share with you, actually, I'm gonna do a couple of things here. And this will be, kind of fun, I guess. But I'm going to try sharing my screen and see if it actually works. So let's do this. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So let me know if you see that. Are you seeing my screen? Yes, good. Hi. Friday, career happy hour. Yes, good. Let me know if you see my screen. That'd be helpful. Hopefully that's broadcasting to your side. But I wanted to share a poll that I performed. By the way, LinkedIn just implemented a new feature on their platform that I think you all should take advantage of, or at least consider taking advantage of. And that is polls. And so I put in a poll this last week and asked a very simple question. Here, let me make it bigger for you all so you can see it. Which is most important to getting interviews? Okay, is it resume, LinkedIn profile, or internal contact? And overwhelmingly, people said internal contact, like 75%. I recognize there's only 83 votes. So if you all could share, in fact, I'm going to put this, actually, can I take a link? I think I can take a link to this. Copy link to post. And I will put that in the chat. And I wonder if that'll actually get to you. No, it only goes to, looks like it only goes to YouTube and Periscope. So I apologize. I'm going to come over here and hopefully, oh, look at that. Maybe I'll pull that over here just instead so you don't see that. But here's some of the topics we're going to talk about today. So I'll keep sharing my screen so you can think about that for a second. Here, I'll go ahead and put a link to that poll. And if you haven't answered the poll, If you could do that, please, I'd really appreciate it. It'd be super helpful. I didn't mean to broadcast my broadcast, so apologize for that. But so that's what we're talking about. I put the link to the thing in the chat. So here's some of the topics that I want to address today, and I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. But it's the idea of are there going to be some post-pandemic openings? And I believe there is. Once these companies come out of the fear and the withdrawal from the marketplace, I believe a lot of companies are going to start hiring again. There's a lot of companies hiring now. Don't get me wrong. Most of those are technology companies or companies in need of supply chain because they're stressed in terms of delivering product and service to all of us who are shelter in place or work from home situations. So I think the supply chains are going to be stretched for several quarters, especially those goods and services that maybe are sourced from places like China or outside the United States. So I'm hoping what this signals is a more accelerated transition to more manufacturing onshore. I think that would be a benefit to us as a society, and that's something we could certainly talk about. But keep your eyes and ears open for any kind of opportunities that are coming. And the thing is, I believe that companies are always hiring. And so if we can keep the mindset that companies are always hiring, then we'll never be in a position where, oh, are they or aren't they? Let's just assume they are. Let's assume all companies are hiring. And then there's a couple things that came up this last couple of weeks that I didn't really believe myself. I guess I came to it with a little bit of doubt. And that's that idea of bias, right? Now, bias in terms of pandemic impacted. Let me see. I'm trying to use see if this works. What do you think? What do you think? Do you think people? Let me see if this works. Add caption. There we go. Hey, did that work? Do you believe? So the topic we're talking about right now is: do you believe that there is a bias in the marketplace right now for those candidates, maybe that are unemployed, that were impacted by the pandemic? What do you think? And so let me know in the chat your thoughts on that. My thoughts are it's possible, right? Any kind of impact to hiring by that is possible. I mean, it totally is. And so what I'm thinking in this space is we as candidates, if we are impacted, let's say prior to the virus or the pandemic and the shutdown and all the things that have happened, do people treat us differently? And the potential is there for sure. The potential is there. So how do we as candidates, whether we were impacted by the pandemic or not, how do we as candidates actually address that in, say, an interview? And that's something that you need to practice. I can't. So here's the assumption I would make when I respond to that in, say, an interview. And that is everybody's been impacted by the virus, right? Everybody's been impacted by the pandemic. Nobody's been insulated. So the idea here is, we overcome that objection because it is an objection. It's not a condition for employment. You're not in a position where they're selecting somebody else because they have an MD and you don't, and you want to be a doctor. Okay, so that's a condition of employment. And so there's a difference between a condition and an objection. And objections are very easily overcome by positioning with confidence. So you need to acknowledge. The first step is to acknowledge. I recognize that we're all impacted by the virus, by the pandemic, by the shutdowns, not just the ones that were maybe displaced or furloughed or laid off because of it. Okay, so there's that to think about. So acknowledge that it's true that everybody, not just the folks that have been impacted directly by it, but indirectly by the incapacity of companies to hire. I've had several candidates that I've looked at, people that I've coached and come across that were in the finals right? They had gone through all the rounds of interviews. They had gotten to the end. They were selected as a finalist, and those opportunities evaporated. So it is absolutely possible that those people were impacted by this pandemic. So you can say, yes, even though I might have been laid off or displaced in 2019, and it's just taken me some time to find the right opportunity, that it's not that you weren't impacted by the virus during your displacement, but you're certainly being impacted now. So I think that's really something to think about. So I like these little captions. What do you guys think about the captions? That's kind of cool. So what's this next one? Okay, let's try that one. Does that show up? Let's try that one. Yay, all right. So the next topic, networking amplified. And so this came to mind because I think, as you know, all economies, all business runs in cycles, okay? And when the cycles are good, it doesn't take much effort, okay? So for the last several years, there's been way more opportunities, openings at companies than candidates to fill them. That's fact, okay? In fact, Terry's on here. Terry could probably validate that. He's been doing hiring for a long time, and I'm sure many of you have seen the same thing, is that when supply and demand impact, then it's either one way or another. So it's been a candidate market for a while. Now that's changed. With the pandemic, there's way more candidates than there are maybe perceived open positions. What does that mean? Well, that exacerbates the activities that you need to participate in as a candidate to find opportunities. So if you could apply to maybe, let's say, 10 roles and you got 5 interviews, I'm not sure you're going to get those conversion rates anymore, because that method is going to be even more crowded. You're going to have, instead of maybe 80 to 100 candidates per role, 200, 300 applicants, maybe more per requisition. So what you'll find is the conversion rate on applications is going to plummet. That means that's not a productive activity any longer. But what that also means is, on the flip side, that networking needs to be amplified. That means if it was like, okay, maybe it was 7 out of 10, a 70% success rate with the networking when the market was good. Maybe it was even better than that. Maybe it was like 90%. I mean, I don't know. The success rate might have been so good. It's like, hey, you got a pulse, you're hired. We don't need your resume. Thanks for showing up here. Can you start tomorrow? But what I'm seeing is that the networking is going to become more important because the other methods are just so crowded. In your capacity to actually share a valid message to other people. Good. I'm glad. I'm glad that looks polished. Thank you, Ted. So if you want to come on, we can try this right now. I mean, I don't mind, truthfully. Anybody that wants to come on. It looks like Terry's kind of tried this. Maybe I wonder if I click on Terry. No, it won't let me do that. So Terry, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the studio guest link. It looks like I can have up to 4 people on the stream. And I'm going to go back to LinkedIn. And I'm going to see if it's going to let you in the waiting room. I'll do the same for you, Ted. It'll let me bring in 1 or 2 people at once. So just bear with me. I need to go over to my messages. So there we go. Hopefully, Terry. So Terry, look at your LinkedIn messages. Make sure you copy and paste the link that you have there, rather than. Yeah, so copy and paste the link. Don't click on the picture. Copy and paste the actual link, if that makes sense. So whoever shows up here first, I guess, gets in. So we'll leave it up to that, and we'll see how it goes. Hey, I'm flying on the seat of my pants here today, because when I logged into OBS, the system I use to broadcast a restream, it disconnected all of my channels, and I had to go anyway, it was a mess. So we had a little technical difficulty here. Not sure because I was riffed 6 weeks before the pandemic and had to continue the job search during the pandemic because my original leads dried up. But I think I I'm ready for hire versus someone who maybe recall. Yeah. So there is, I mean, certainly there's advantage to those of you that have been at this for a while longer, because you've processed a lot of your, you processed a lot of the emotions. You maybe have had some repetitions. You've had some interviews. You've put together a schedule. You kind of have a rhythm going on, but it still isn't easy. I will grant you that. So thanks for that observation. Let me see who's in here now. Wow, it looks like we got 2 people. I'm going to go ahead and select. Hang on. Let me get rid of the captions here. Let me get rid of that first. Okay, there we go. So let's try Terry. Terry, are you there? Let me get the microphone.
Yeah, I'm here.
Phones. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So what's on your mind, Terry? This is free career coaching. What questions for me today?
Well, I don't, first of all, I don't disagree with you. I think networking becomes more front and center than ever before. I think, anybody that's been through the exercise very often or even a little bit probably is already kind of aware of that. I think, though, that you're right. I mean, there's a huge amount of impact going on across multiple industries. We just saw the news this morning about IBM, pulling back their quarterly outlook, and now they're talking about laying off a couple thousand people, and so on. And that those ripple effects are going to continue for a while. But I think, in all honesty, I think there is a lot of hiring that's still going on right now, and I think as we start to turn the corner on this thing, that I agree with your perspective. I think it starts to grow and so forth. I guess, if I had to maybe frame it in the form of a question to you, what do you think is particularly if you're somebody who is introverted or is uncomfortable engaging conversations with people, especially people that they may not necessarily know very well, or they may not have interacted with or spoken with for a couple of years, how would you coach somebody to initiate that conversation? I've got some thoughts on that, but I'm curious about what you would suggest for somebody that's, just having to start this engine up.
Let's see if this works. Okay. There it is. Did I sum that up right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good. So the question is, as an introvert, which, whether you believe it or not, I'm an introverted person. I like reading books. I like studying. I like learning. So I'm actually an introvert. It takes energy and deliberate action to make it happen. So how would I reinitiate with people that have gone cold maybe, or that don't know about my process? I think the best way is through apology. What I've found is that if you reach out to somebody and you go at them with a demand for employment, they're often standoffish. They'll put out their hand and say, no, thank you. However, if I reach out to somebody and I haven't talked to this person in 2, 3, 4 or more years, I'm going to say, sorry, I should have been in better contact. I know this pandemic is impacting all of us. I'm sure it has you. Are you okay? Mm-hmm. Now, what did I end with there? It was a question, wasn't it? Now, the nice thing is the less I do the talking and the more I do the asking, the better results I'm going to get with my networking. And so if I make it about them and their situation, and then at some point I lead that conversation from something at first base to second base, what are you doing? How's the work going? What opportunities are you seeing in the marketplace from your perspective right now? Now I'm still asking questions, but they're more related to the way I want the conversation to go after I've had a chance to break the ice. Now, not all those, Terry, certainly are going to happen at one setting, right? You're not going to do that in one conversation. It might be 2, 3, 4 conversations over what? Time. 2, 3, 4 meetings over a month, right? So that's part of it. And you have to recognize that trust is built through investment of time and consistency and integrity. Integrity meaning do what you say you're going to do, right?
Right.
Good. Well, that
Yeah.
was fun.
Yeah.
Fun having people on here. So I got another person here. So if there's anybody else that wants to give this a shot, I'm happy to bring you on. I see Ted's here now, and maybe I'll bring on Ted here and just see what happens. But thanks for joining, Terry. I do appreciate that.
You bet.
Yeah. Best of luck to you, sir. So that a great question by Terry. If you guys have any other questions, I'm happy to answer. Man, we've got a lot of chats in here too. Todd Wilson. At what age does age become an issue? So I'll answer that question with a question. At what age is age not an issue? So that's a mindset deal. What I've found is that it works both ways. If it bothers you, then it's an issue. So I do appreciate that question. Todd, if you have more context around that on how it's impacting you personally, I'm happy to help you process that. So let's get Terry's question off of the screen here. There we go. I think we have a question probably coming from Ted. All right, Ted, let's give this a shot. Ted, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, Andrew. How
Yeah,
are you?
geez, man, how have you been? It's been a while.
Oh, it has been a while. I was thinking, how long have I been learning about networking from you? And I'm thinking, like 2007 or something like that.
It's been a long time, hasn't it? Well, it's so good to hear from you. I'm so glad you reached out, and that LinkedIn poll feature really pulled you in, didn't it?
Yeah, that's cool. I've been reading a lot about the poll feature, and plus, I try to drive traffic for you. I just want to say, by the way, my hair was exactly this gray in 2007. So there's like zero change. Yeah. And you actually look younger, so I'm not sure.
Well, you see, I've really benefited. I don't know if anybody knows this, but when you use Zoom, they have a Botox feature.
Cool.
Yeah, you go into the video settings and it actually smooths out the little crow's feet. I mean, it makes me look so young.
You have little crow's feet? I don't have that ever.
Well, it's on your mind, Ted. I'm sure you have.
Oh, thanks for having on now. Well, I'm jealous Terry has all the good questions. So my question for you today is, I'm trying to move my career onto the next level. And for me, one of the difficulties is I'm a guy who has, shall we say, an eclectic background. As you know, we've known each other a while. I've done a lot of different things. And so when you look at my resume, there is definitely not a straight line that runs between anything. So, I started in engineering, spent a solid decade in supply chain, moved into technology, and now I'm a sales director in cloud. None of which I would have predicted on career day in high school, right? So my question today, and I'll try and feed you a better question next week. But my question today is how do you take someone? I view that as a real strength, right? So for instance, I was having a conversation today with a recruiter, and he's like, "Hey, yes, I'm looking at you for a sales role, but I really need somebody with engineering and manufacturing experience."
Sure.
And so, you raise your hand, and you're like, "Yeah."
Okay.
So really, what's the best way to market that? How do you do that?
Well, so you really have two questions. One is, how do I handle inquiry from a recruiter when they look at my background on paper and start asking me questions of confusion? And so if you're generating a document like a resume that has all this myriad of experience, this eclectic background, then the recruiter has to make some sort of determination on where do you fit, right? So there's things you can do there to kind of align your resume to a certain avatar, if you will, to borrow a marketing term. So that's the one side. So you're getting feedback from the marketplace that your background is not fitting a box. That's not a bad thing. Just recognize that your marketing piece is communicating that, i.e. the resume or the LinkedIn profile. Both of those are in your control, and you can modify that to better suit your needs for getting past the gatekeepers. No offense to those in HR talent acquisition.
You can be offensive to them if you want. I'm actually
no. There's actually Terry was just on. He's actually an exceptional guy in HR. So they're just like any profession. There's some that are good and some that aren't so good. Okay,
I know, but it's fun to make fun of them, especially to jobs.
He's not here to defend himself.
They want to hear that.
Yeah, very
I'll
good.
the audience, Andrew. Work with me, man.
Right. No, I gotcha. So the other side of this is the eclectic background. So your brand should transcend the company you work for. or the
Okay.
title that you hold. Okay. So when we're talking about a professional brand, a personal brand for you,
Mhm.
we look at the value in a different way that transcends those things. So you look at each of your experiences and say, what did I love about that experience? What was consistent in what I did, regardless of the role, title, or company? Okay.
Mhm.
And we look at the thread in there that takes you to the next level. So when you talk about next level, what are you really talking about?
So, at this point, I had interviewed briefly for what I thought was kind of a dream gig that didn't quite work out. But really trying to move like to the VP level in some of these technology manufacturing companies, where to be in a customer facing manufacturing or engineering role with them, kind of the lower VP level.
Okay. And so how big is that marketplace really?
Like right now, that marketplace
Well,
is
I
pretty
mean,
dang
hang
small.
on.
Yeah.
Let me make that specific to you based on your
Mhm.
requirements for geography, industry,
Yeah,
compensation, right?
yeah, that
Size
number
of
is probably
organization.
less than 100 that are open on any given day. Probably
Okay.
less than 50 that are open on any given day. Yeah.
Okay. So you're talking openings or companies?
Openings.
Okay. So I'm talking companies. So if you had a list of companies, regardless, I mean, let's assume for a moment, Ted, that every company
Hmm.
is hiring.
Okay.
Okay. How many companies do you really want to work for? Just based on what you know about them.
Yeah, it's not that big of a number. So let's call that number 75, 100, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a sizable market. Okay.
Hmm.
And so that addressable market is something you'd have to prioritize and take a look at. And I could give you advice on what that looks like, but who is the arbiter of your success in any one company?
That would be me. Yeah.
Well, that would be the person hiring you.
Well, in that context, yeah, yeah.
Right. So what we need to do is find out what's important to them versus
Hmm.
what's resonating with us. And then the beauty of networking, Ted, is you don't have to proceed a conversation with a resume, a LinkedIn profile, or any pomp and circumstance. It's just a conversation. It's low stakes.
Hmm.
So I would identify those companies and go talk to the people in a position of power with a pulse and
Hmm.
the capacity to hire someone like you.
Good advice.
Right. So
Yeah, and then work in the network to get in to talk to them. Yeah.
right. And sometimes we feel like it's a straight line. And I haven't ever seen where it's a straight line between here's the position, here's the requisition, here's my resume, here's the interview, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has an experience I'm sorry, I get something in my mouth. Has an experience that's a little bit different than, right. So every experience is going to be different based on the role. But as you
Hmm.
know, the higher you go in the organization, the fewer those roles are available. So the good news is it's not crowded. The bad news
Yeah.
is there aren't many roles available, right? So it's going to come down to trust and relationships. The higher you get in the organization.
Hmm. And would
Okay.
you? I mean, I think you would agree with this statement, but my feeling is that as you get higher up in the organization, the more the hiring process becomes uh, more. I don't know. Informal is not quite the right word, but certainly not as you say, less linear, right? I mean, if I'm hiring, a college hire accountant, that's a pretty straightforward process. But when you're thinking about shaping a role at the higher level, things become a lot more conversation based and nebulous. Would you agree with that?
I would
Maybe
agree that the
nebulous
higher
not the
you
right
get in the
word, but
organization, the more you identify the requirements based on conversation, right? The lower in the
mhm,
organization, those requirements are pretty standardized, right?
yeah,
What does it take to be a customer service rep at Amazon? To answer the phone, answer texts, right? Do chat,
hmm,
check inventory, right? It's just really to the point where the lower you get in the organization, it's fairly standardized. But the higher you get in the organization, it's going to be more important for you to understand what do they really need, what are they really trying to
hmm,
accomplish, and how do you fit that issue or that situation. Does that make sense?
hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Awesome.
All right.
Wow,
Well,
this has been
thanks for
fun.
having me on as a guest. I feel very, very CNN about this whole
Well,
thing. With
for
with
those
the
of you,
captions, you look so smooth, man. Look at you. I tell you.
well, Ted, the thing is, maybe people should know about you. What do you want to maybe
Should I introduce myself to your studio
yeah, I mean,
audience?
what is it that you do? Who are you and why are you here, Ted?
I'm here because I get fantastic advice from managers since the mid 2000s. In fact, just today, my wife was telling me how many had mentioned something I'd learned from you, which is that networking is really about helping the other person. And as much as I feel like I'm not very good at networking, she was telling me that that I was like her role model in that. And I'm like, what? I'm no Andrew Beach. So Andrew and I have known each other quite a while. My background originally was as a manufacturing and metallurgical engineer in the metals industry. I spent a solid decade doing supply chain for metals manufacturers before moving into technology. Spent about 5 years doing supply chain management, sourcing engineering, and contract negotiation for Microsoft in their devices world, and then into the cloud. And for the last year and a half, 2 years, I've been a director of sales for hyperscale for Inspur. We're the number 3 world's manufacturer of servers. So, hyperscale cloud service providers. I live in Seattle. You can kind of guess how I spend my days.
Yeah.
So, my unique view on the world is working in the cloud business for these multi-billion-dollar companies for Inspur, which is to make matters even more unique, is a Chinese company headquartered out of Jinan. So we work across the ocean, and there's like 60,000 employees, and I think I'm one of about half dozen of them who were born in the U.S. So culturally, that's been really interesting and really challenging. As Andrew knows, I lived and worked in China for quite a while, so that's been kind of part of my brand for a long time.
Okay, so are you fluent in many languages, or just the 2? Or
like I could buy in Mandarin.
Okay.
I wouldn't describe myself as fluent. I've certainly been practicing, and then every now and then my coworkers just give me a look and just kind of go, "Oh, dude, just English. Just go back to English."
Stop
You're
it!
hurting us.
You're
just
ruining it.
Stop.
We need to practice our English more than you need to practice your Mandarin. That's awesome.
No, they're pretty clear. I need to practice Mandarin. Yeah.
Awesome. Good.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on. And again, for everybody who's watching, I just say, Andrew, I just want to say thanks, man. I've learned so much from you over more years than either of us would probably care to admit, man. You're been
welcome.
a great role model for me in this. So thank you.
Good. Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you. Be well.
You too.
All right. So that's Ted, everybody. So let's look. Is there any other questions out there? Go ahead and put them in the chat. If it's related to career, market planning, interviewing, resume, that sort of thing. Let me see. What is my next topic here? Let's see. Actually, captions. Good. I don't see anybody else putting in those sorts of things. Let's get rid of that. Let's see, what's my next? Polls on LinkedIn, yes. Okay, so we talked about that. And then I also did some research. So I don't know if you all know this, but I put out a email early in the year thinking that I would be doing a free training. And what ended up happening is I put out that email, I did some research, I was getting ready to do the training, and then the pandemic hit and it changed everything. So, but I did want to share with you the results of that research, and I thought it was really interesting. The things that came out of that. Let me see if I can get to the notes that I have about. I think. Let me see how many results I got here. 66. I got 66 people that completed the survey. And so what happened was I drew some really interesting things from that. Based on the questions I asked everybody, what objective do you most want to accomplish in 2020? And what I did with that question is I looked at each answer and I counted. I know this isn't the analytical me. I counted how many words were in your objective when I asked you that question. I was shocked that there were maybe, I don't know, 8.5, 9% had more than 20 words in their objective. Most of them were 7 words, 9 words. So what I would suggest is that if you're going to put together an objective, make sure it's very clear that you know who you're working for or what you're working towards, right? And so like Ted had mentioned earlier, he's looking for VP level opportunities. Great. In what industry, doing what kind of work, in what kind of way? So the more clear we can be on our target, the more the more clear and focused we're going to be. So make sure that if you're going through this process to actually be looking for work, that you know very specifically what it is you want, because that's how people like me can help you. So when you're doing your networking, it's very important to think about taking advantage of being very clear on your objective. Okay. Now, some of those were shorter, but they were very clear on what they were trying to accomplish. So I don't know that the word count mattered, but I did count the words, and there were very few that were over 20 words. The other thing I did is based on your responses to the research, I found that about, let's see, of my followers, so this, I don't know if this is relevant or not, but over 52% were underemployed or unemployed. Makes sense. I'm a career coach, that those people would follow me. But almost 42% were employed. So it was interesting. That was just the breakdown of how people responded. And then the number one area where you wanted input from me in terms of training was how to find the right job. Followed closely by crafting a powerful branding statement and getting and staying on track. So what I heard there was really three things, three topics that you all are interested in. One, something regarding belief and self-worth, having belief in yourself and your worth in the marketplace. That was one. The other one is effective communications, being able to communicate effectively what it is you want, where you want to do it, how well you do it, some examples, that sort of thing. Being able to communicate effectively was top of your list. And then helpful accountability was number 3. So self-worth and belief in ourselves. Effective communication was the second one, and helpful accountability. Now, by that, I mean people were really looking for someone to keep them on track. So that was where that came from. So some sort of helpful accountability to help you get and stay on track. So again, that was the breakdown of the research that I had from that particular situation. Let's see. May you please give us some good examples of objectives? Yes. Title, industry, location, right? We're talking about being very specific. So Ted, who was on here earlier, executive leader in a manufacturing organization, supply chain, sales, helping technology companies bring new products to market, right? That's very clear. In Seattle, right? Reporting to an executive leader like a CEO, right? So now I'm very clear on what I'm doing, where I'm headed. That's an objective. Now that could be, I mean, Ted might be at director level, maybe senior manager level now, even though he's, VP of sales, depending on the size of the company, that could mean, or director of sales, that could be a 2 to 3 year project. And so it's okay when companies say to you, where do you want to be in 2 to 3 years? Think about your professional objective that way. So that's what I would recommend there. Now, part of this is internal, right? That's you understanding where you're going. The other part of this is how you execute. And that would be how you get people to help you get there. And that's where the networking would come in. So good question. It's interesting. That showed up as a LinkedIn user. So maybe that's something I need to look at here. So I don't know if anybody else saw that in the chat. Any other messages for me or questions? Oh, yeah, that was Ashwini. I wanted to give you some credit for that. Good. Thank you, Ashwini. Appreciate you. Good. Well, that's all I really have for today. If anybody else, so by the way, if you're interested in getting some live coaching like I provided Ted or even Terry today, please let me know. send me a private message either on LinkedIn or I suppose I could put my email on the screen here and you could email me. I don't have any problem with that. Let's see, live coaching, email me. Hit add caption, and then I'll put it on the screen and you guys can email me if it's something you're really interested in. Coming on live and getting some free coaching every Friday. I'm committed to doing this. And now that I've I kind of understand how this Restream thing works, that I feel pretty good about it. It's working pretty good, and I think you guys will see that. And I'll go back and look at the recording. In fact, if you guys want to see any of these recordings or the archives, I have it on my YouTube channel, so I can certainly, you can search Andrew Beach over there or send me a message and I'll get you the link. It's super easy to find. So if you don't have any other questions, I will wish you a happy weekend. Did my question go through? Are there different types of, hang on, watch this. Haha. Are there different types of personal marketing plans? Someone suggested a portfolio style to show my work, but since most of my professional work revolved around intellectual property, I'm not sure how to go about it. Any ideas? Get permission. Get permission. So if you have something that's intellectual property or you signed an NDA and they say no way, get permission on what parts of it you can share. What I found is many people are too afraid to share anything. They never go back to their employer and get signed off on what is it that I can share. So in terms of portfolio and sharing your accomplishments, I think you would be treading lightly on that, first of all. Second of all, I think it's okay to share in generalities without sharing the intellectual property or the details of the success. You can say, I worked for a large company that did this kind of work and we got, somewhere in this neighborhood of results. So, speaking in generalities is certainly okay because you're not sharing any intellectual property. So thanks, Joel. I appreciate that question very much. That was really helpful, I'm sure, for a lot of people. But now I don't know how to get it to go away. That's great. So I'm sure there's a way to get that to go away. Huh. Yeah, it doesn't have a way. Check your NDA expiration dates. Thank you, Ted. Appreciate that. Sounds like you've had some experience there. I don't have any way to turn off this caption once it's on there. So I apologize. All right, folks. Well, I do wish you the best. Happy Memorial Day. I do appreciate you and the opportunity to be here and serve as a resource. If you're interested, send me a message again on the coaching side. I am going to be doing a webinar probably first of next month to share some of the results. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. I'll have more details on how to sign up for that webinar in something a little more detail. All right, everybody. Hope you're well. Take care, and we'll see you next Career Happy Hour.